Hello everyone, greetings from PayTabs technical support team. In this series, you will learn how to integrate with PayTabs through our PT2 API endpoints. And here, we will walk you through the third integration type, which is the managed form. For the purpose of this series, we have created a very simple Laravel project to walk you through the integration process. But feel free to follow the steps in this series with your own project, whatever the programming language or the framework used to integrate with PayTabs. So, let's get started. In this video, we are going to learn more about how you can handle the payment response and what is the return URL and how you can use this return URL to redirect your customers back to your website after the payment is done. So, let's get started. The first thing you should know is that you can find the full documentation for this part inside PayTab support portal under the article called the Managed Form APIs Integration Manual. Now, if we navigate to step 3 over here, you can see that there is a way to handle the payment responses, which is the direct payment responses directly after finishing your payment. So if you remember back over here in step 3, when we used to initiate a payment, like this one in part 2, we had two types of cards. Over here in the back end side, if you remember, we have two types of card. We have the 3DS card and the non-3DS card. And if you remember, in the 3DS card or the 3D secured cards, we advise you that instead of finalizing the payment directly, you receive a response that is a redirect URL for the 3D secure level, which is the OTP level. So this actually will be outside of your website. So how can you, if in the case of using a 3DS secure card, how can you redirect the customer back to your website and redirect him to an exact URL and receive the transaction response in this URL? So this is the using or how we can use the return URL inside the managed form integration type. So what we are going to do now is we are going to see first our return URL parameter. So as you can see here inside step 5 actually, we have the return URL response. The return URL response is simply a parameter. This parameter you pass inside your request payload and you receive in it a simple transaction reference and you redirect the customer back to your website onto this URL. So this is exactly what we done over here. You can see inside our request payload, we have created a very simple return URL, and in the case, if you remember in the controller over here, we have checked if this response of the return response or the payment response does not contain a payment result. So this means that the payment is not done. We have a redirect URL. So we have redirected the customer to the redirect URL. So the using of the return URL in this case, this one, is that after the customer finishes the OTP level, the 3DS level, he will be redirected back to this URL over here, and along with this redirection, you will receive a basic transaction details. But note, we highly recommend you to rely on the post transaction response, not the return transaction response or the payment response, as you're going to learn in the next video that the post transaction reference are a request, server to server request that will contain all the transaction details. As for this one, the return response will not contain all the transaction detail, and it may not be a fully transaction yet, as the customer may change the return or does not return back to your website. Any customer behavior could affect it, but this will not happen with the post-transaction, post-payment transaction response, and that's why we recommend that you rely on the post-transaction response, which is the callback. So for now, we have created this URL inside our backend, and this URL simply is a page where it checks the response of the return. Is it's authorized, it will return a successful response page. If it's failed, it will return a fail error page, and it will handle the response. It will show something to the customer, it will not show something to the customer. So as you can see here, it's a very simple response, a very simple function controller. We receive the response from the return URL, we parse it, and we check for the response status over here. Of course, you can check all the parameter that you receive inside the return URL over here, the acquire messages, the acquire RN, All of these are the details that you are going to receive in the return URL response. So what I'm going is I'm going to check the response status. The response status will show if it's A, so it's a successful transaction. If it's not A, it's a cancel or decline transaction. So what I'm doing simply inside my return function is that I'm checking if is this a response status of A, I will return the success view. If it's not, I will return the error view. So now what we are going to do, we are going to get back over here to our payment and let's test this out and see how the return URL works. I'm going to fill out this details and this time I'm going to use a 3DS secured card, so it will look like this. Of course, you can find the 3DS and the non-3DS secure card inside our solution portal. Now I'm going to fill out all the details, and as you can see, once I check out, I will be redirected to the OTP or the 3DS secure simulation. Here, normally the customer will be asked to fill out his OTP, and once he's done, now is the part, as you can see, we are out of your server, we are in another server, PayTabs server. Once it's done, I'm going to get back to the return URL that I have provided over here. And now what I'm going to do this time, I'm going to display the response inside this page just for you to show the full request that I have received inside this URL. So I'm going to get back over here. I'm going to change display payload to true. And I'm going to return it inside my page over here. And as you can see, just let's make sure we have saved. Okay. Now it's true. Our response status of A. Believe everything is working fine. Have compacted the success over here. Now let's get back over here and initiate the transaction again like that. Actually, I'm going to use the 3DS secure card. And that's it. Fill out the details. Now let's check it out. Seems I have an error over here. Syntax error, unexpected values. Display payload. Let's check out our code. So I believe we have missed a letter over here. I'll get back over here and try again. Yes, this is it. We just missed out a letter. As you can see now, I have the full response. This is the full return response that you're supposed to receive. It contains the acquire message, acquire RN, the card ID, the customer email, response code, response message, response status, signature, token, and transaction reference. Now, you can use whatever you want from these. I have used the transaction reference and show it over here. I have also used the card ID and show it over here. So this is a simple simulation of how you can handle the return response inside your account or inside your managed form integration type. And another thing, if you want to verify this response to make sure it's coming from PayTabs, just to avoid any malware or any unethical attack that may happen. So we have actually provided you with a way that you can verify that this response is coming from PayTabs. So if we just write over here how to verify the response received from PayTabs, you can see that you can verify the callback and we can verify the return URL. So how this verification is happening, simply once you receive the response, it will contain a signature. This signature would look like this. So we are going to use this signature along with your API key and with some hashing to make sure that this response is coming from PayTabs. So simply what we are going to do, this is the response coming from PayTabs and the return URL. So what you're going to do to verify that this response is coming from PayTabs, first thing, you are going to remove the signature from the response to put it away. Secondly, you are going to remove any empty parameters. So if you remember over here, we had an empty acquire message, an empty acquire, and so you want to remove it also. So after that, after removing an empty parameter, you will need to sort it out and you will need to provide a URL encoding Okay, and after the URL encoding, you will have something that looks like this. Finally, you will need to hash this final result, and for the hashing, of course, we are using the SHA-256 along with your server key as a key. The server key, of course, if you want to learn how you can get your server key, you can check our solution article, how to get my authentication APIs keys. Actually, let's take a look at it. Authentication API key, how to get my authentication integration APIs key. As you can see over here, you'll get your APIs keys. If you want to get your server key or API key, can check the solution article. So now we are going to use this API key to hash the final result, this final result. And once it's hashed, what you want to do is simply compare the result, this one, with the signature received from PayTabs. You remember the signature that we removed from here, this signature over here. And if they are both the same, of course, this means that this transaction or this response is coming from PayTap side, and now your response is verified. Inside our response code, inside this solution article, you'll find a PHP sample code that does this. We have implemented this PHP sample code over here, as you can see inside our payment repository. It's called as verified. So simply we check if it's empty and a signature. We remove the signature key. We done some hashing using the server key, and we check if it's equal finally. So I'm going to return true. If it's not, I'm going to return false. This is simply how you can verify that this response is coming from PayTap side. And now we can move to the next part.